making any decisions, which kind of makes sense when I explained earlier, right? So that's not true. More often my day is filled with both good and bad decisions, I've found anyway, or at least people tell me. That's not to say that some days don't lean one way or another, only that I have a propensity to focus on the negative. So I think my day is always going worse than it actually is. So going back to the analogy of the path, the longer I walk with Jesus, the more my decision making is shaped by him, and the more good decisions I seem to be able to string together in a row without making a bad one. But 1 John 1:8 says, if we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. So I still find myself taking the wrong path, making a wrong turn, getting lost all the time, making a poor decision. If I'm consistently going to God, going to his word for the answers, seeking advice from fellow believers, and surrounding myself with the people of God, it's a lot easier for me to realize when I need to turn around. So part of that was for approximately, we'll say, 15 years, I was addicted to prescription pills and then later on heroin. So I can get going down a path, and if I'm not evaluating and questioning the path that I'm going down, I'll just keep going down it until it ultimately leads to a dead end that I can't continue going, that I can't even turn around myself, which for me the dead end was jail. Seems like that tends to be the dead end for a lot of people. But, so, the end of the acrostic 10 is need to admit our wrongs promptly. His acrostics are always so crazy. Like, at least this one kind of makes sense, I guess. It's not, at least he didn't try to make an acrostic out of crossroads, which would have been really long. And his acrostics are always stressed anyway, I think. Anyway, that was an aside for you. So, the need to admit our wrongs promptly. I feel like I'm pretty good at this part. Probably too good. In the recent past, I know I've been too quick to make amends for something I perceived I did wrong. I suppose I thought admitting I was wrong involved making amends. I'm not so sure about that part anymore, but if it does, the part that I always tend to forget from the amends step is accepting to do so would harm them or others. I tend to think that I did something wrong and try to apologize for it before I realize who it would hurt. And if you've heard that part of anything before, accepting to do so would harm them or others, you realize that I'm included in others. So I realized that sometimes it's not always a good idea for me to just jump into making amends or admitting that I was wrong or I thought that I was wrong. Most of the time, I just think that I'm wrong. So my motivation for admitting I'm wrong isn't always clear to me. Sometimes I'm admitting I'm wrong because I made a mistake that changed a relationship from something that I liked into something that I was not happy about afterwards. So, returning to the analogy about the path again, I find myself walking down the path, and the path gets hard because I've made a bad decision. And I can still see the other path that I didn't pick, and it looks way easier. Like, way more pleasant, like a path I really want to be on, especially when the path that I'm on is hard. But that's not always the path God wants me on. Sometimes God wants me on the hard path, and that's hard for me to accept, especially when I can still see the other path. And I'm like, that one's so much easier. Can't I? And like, I haven't gone too far to go back and turn around yet and like apologize and make amends. But that's me thinking that that's the right path for me, when it isn't always. Sometimes God wants me on the hard path, which is super hard for me to accept, because the hard path is, by definition, the harder of the two paths, right? So I want to go back and take the easy way. Almost always I want to take the easy way. it looks like the right path from where I'm at, which is normally right in the middle of it. Like lost in the wilderness, stuck out in the storm. So yeah, I kind of mentioned earlier the story of what brought me to God, and that has led me to understand that just because I'm on the hard path doesn't mean that it's the right path, or doesn't mean that it's not the right path. There we go. Because I've come to realize that without the hard path that I traveled, I would never have come to God in the first place.
Yeah.
If I hadn't been in jail with no other option but to go into a year-long rehab program that was faith-based called Teen Challenge, I would have gone literally anywhere else. So if it hadn't been for that specific path, I would still be using drugs. I definitely wouldn't be saved right now. So that's all I really have for you. So thank you for listening to me. I'm terrible at wrapping things up.